Our ignorance of the truth that sets us free is the white oppressor's greatest power over us. And they've embedded lots of false information into our minds that keeps us divided and confused and separated from that truth. Fortunately, some of us are born with a sort of spiritual immune system that gives us the ability to see through the maze of lies and confusion which our oppressors have designed for us. Throughout generations, our ancestors have always provided us with those they've given the spiritual insight and an innate ability to see through the prison our enemies have created for our minds. Those of us bestowed with this gift of spiritual insight must teach the truth to those of us who weren't born with that gift. Those who know must teach. African proverb. The truth is that most Black people are not presently perceiving nor interacting with the white society based upon an accurate interpretation of the true history shared between all racial groups. Most Black people are instead functioning based upon a programmed mindset that serves and protects the system of white supremacy. Proof that most Black people are not functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the true history shared between us and the white society, but are instead functioning based upon a programmed mindset that serves the system of white supremacy, is clearly made evident by the fact that millions of Black people, now self-identified by the N-word, reveres Caucasians and perceives ourselves as being our worst enemy. If we were functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the true history shared between our two racial groups, those noted beliefs and practices and behaviors that currently prevails throughout our communities would not be possible. We are clearly currently functioning in ways that serve the system of white supremacy. This is all possible because regardless of how intelligent people are, it is possible to control the input of information and media images that people receives. It's entirely possible to control what they'll believe, how they will think, and even how they'll behave. There are 4 ways to effectively brainwash an entire generation of people: by what they're taught, by what they see, by what they hear, and through repetition. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the media images we see, and the societal narrative that we repetitively hear, white oppressive forces have therefore manipulated the collective minds of millions of Black people to think in ways that are against our own interests and that instead serve the system of white supremacy. Case, point, and proof. The reason why millions of us now believe that slavery benefited us is because of those anti-Africa propaganda campaigns that constantly subjects us to seeing only the poorest parts of Africa, while rarely, if ever, showing us the many beautiful, wealthy parts of Africa. Doing so is deliberately designed to make us perceive it that the white society's enslavement of our ancestors ultimately benefited us. This literally makes many of us feel grateful and even indebted to the white society for having brutally enslaved our ancestors. This feeling of indebtedness to the white society is a core reason for the reluctance among many of us to now demand the reparations that we're still owed. The reason why many of us now perceives ourselves as being our worst enemies is because we're constantly inundated with those propaganda campaigns from the white media that exaggerates the issue of Black on Black crime. It is how they demoralize us, divide us, and shifted Black collective aggressions away from their white society and redirected it against ourselves. This propaganda campaign also attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. The true reason why many Black people now reveres Caucasians, in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary, is because most Black people are not perceiving Caucasians based upon our true shared history. Most are instead perceiving Caucasians based upon those movies and TV shows wherein which Caucasians are constantly being depicted as saviors and heroes, righting all wrongs and defending the weak. Most people think that movies are made for nothing more than entertainment. This has never been the case. The greatest social messages are promoted and embedded into our population through movies. Through the movies, the white society has given their racial group a favorable image makeover within the minds of millions of Black people. It was also through the movies that white oppressive forces took the N-word, a word once reviled and deemed deeply offensive by millions of Black people, and not only desensitized many to the word, but also manipulated millions to believe that the word as being a term of endearment, a word of empowerment. So untrue. They began dissocializing with those Black exploitation films during the 1960s, and then they continued it through the white-controlled hip-hop industry. It was also through the white-produced movies that the Black culture was negatively steered to sag our pants and glorify pimps and to call out women by the H word. This isn't scapegoating, it's the absolute truth. Those who controls a people's media images controls their culture, because people often becomes and imitates and becomes those derogatory media depictions of their group that they've accepted as being their reality. Our enemies controls our media images, and they've negatively distorted our media images to covertly negatively steer our culture. It's a true hidden science called negative media social engineering. What many of us naively believe is our own swagger is actually a result of media social engineering. Because we've been totally stripped of our true identity and culture during the slavery of our ancestors, we are therefore more susceptible to negative media social engineering. Through their monopoly over information and media images that are systematically fed into the collective minds of the Black population, white oppressive forces have manipulated our minds in ways that are against our own interests and that instead serve the system of white supremacy. It's a true process. It's called socialized. The nefarious practice is socialized. Socialized is when the dominant culture exploits its monopoly over information that are fed into the minds of the subordinate population to manipulate the subordinate population to think and behave in ways that are against their own interests and that instead serve the interests of their oppressors. White social scientists describe the nefarious process as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of the oppressed that makes the oppressed adhere to the existing infrastructure and authority of the dominant culture. The more you research, the crazier you sound to ignorant people. Our collective state are the result of social sciences. And those of us who tell you the truth are trying to free you from a mental prison that you don't even know you're trapped within. It's time to wake up. One love and peace.